Today we're talking about hearing augmentation. It's going to focus not just on hearing loops, which are the best out of all the options, but also on the other types of technology that occur in public buildings in particular. But it's going to be even broader than that. Last time I spoke about personal microphones, so I'm going to touch on that again as well because it's relevant to hearing loops, or the loops part of that term, hearing loops. So I work for Hearing Connection, our family business. I've actually been working, helps if you turn these clickers on, doesn't it? I've actually been working in hearing augmentation as a career now for nearly 40 years. So April next year will mark the 40th year of my career. So before that, I did my training in electronics through the Department of Aviation. I've done installations of hearing loops and other hearing augmentation Australia-wide and internationally as well. I'll be talking about hearing aids, and I will generally be including cochlear implants when I say the word hearing aids. So, yeah, I've just got the photos there of different types of hearing aids, as well as the cochlear processor and the implant that I've got in my left ear at the moment, right here at the moment. So the question is, I've got 2 cochlear implants, $80,000 worth of technology inside and on my head, most expensive part of my body. Why is it I can't hear better than everybody else? All I want is normal hearing, but yes, we don't get it. First of all, the technology does not deal with the cause. It deals with the symptoms of hearing loss. In the case of cochlear implants, so the cause of hearing loss, 98% of the time, is dead and dying nerve cells in the inner ear, in the cochlea. The hearing aids just amplify the sound, they don't heal the nerves in the inner ear. So we're only dealing with the symptoms of hearing loss, which means it's not loud enough, it's not clear enough. The hearing aid tried to do that, and yeah, every brand of hearing aid sell a TV streamer because they know they can't do it at a distance. They can't replicate what the ear has lost just by treating the symptoms. In the case of cochlear implants, they bypass the nerves to a degree, but a healthy ear has over 20,000 nerves in it. But they only send 22 channels through the cochlear implant, up to 22 channels, depending on the brand.
Can they do more than 22?
They can't. The reason 22 is the maximum at the moment is they've got to make the cochlear implant strong enough, physically strong enough to last a lifetime. So if they make it thinner to fit more channels in, they can't guarantee it'll last a lifetime. When you consider children have been implanted before they're 1 year old. So that's the reason they've limited it, only one of the reasons they've limited it to 22 channels, which is unfortunate, I might add. But they will overcome that eventually with new materials, but I don't see it happening soon, nor have I heard anything on the rumour mill about that increasing. Background noise. Because we're dealing with the symptoms, we can't bring back the ear's natural ability to deal with background noise. We can't even get it to deal with the TV without having a separate device connected, a TV streamer connected to the TV. Of course, with distance we lose volume. The hearing aids can cope with that. If there's no background noise, just turn them up. But what people don't understand is reverberation. The least understood factor with hearing loss. And the reason being that the sound bouncing around the room. So just the distance to the TV the sound from the TV bounces off the ceiling, the floor, the walls, the windows, the furniture. It all arrives at different times and it blurs the signal. So it's not like St Mary's Cathedral where you can actually clap your hands and hear, well, you're not encouraged to clap your hands, but if you do, you can hear the echo over 2 seconds later. Even I can still hear that echo. In the home, it's much more subtle. Unless it's one of those open plan homes with all tile floors, then it becomes much more obvious. But in your average older lounge room, carpet, curtains, everything, I've still got to strain to understand the TV, or I give up on the TV. So I either need a TV streamer or a hearing loop or infrared system or FM system. Some kind of technology to get the sound from the TV to my ears without reverberation, does that wirelessly. So that's why we're talking about hearing loops, that we need to get the sound from the person speaking to the person with hearing loss by other means than acoustically. So for me, I wouldn't even go to the movies if they didn't have a system available, for example. I don't go to events unless there's hearing assistance. I can't go to church without it, because what's the point? I'm just sitting there going to sleep or trying to go to sleep because I can't hear, so I'm bored. So, yes. Hearing loss, hearing augmentation, which includes all the different types, including hearing loops, are essential in public buildings. Just for your interest, in 2006, 1 in 6 people have hearing loss. That's been tabled in Parliament, which means it's fact. Progressing to 1 in 4 in 2050. Now we're already 18 years along that journey. So, we're probably much closer to 1 in 5 now. When you look down into those figures, over half of people over the age of 50 have hearing loss. This is undiagnosed in the most part. Nearly 2/3 over the age of 60, nearly 3/4 over the age of 70 have some form of hearing loss. Some people will be in denial. The rest of their family usually are not in denial and are suffering terribly because the person with hearing loss is in denial. But yeah, those figures are staggering. There are Australian standards. I was the drafting leader for both of them, for AS 1428.5. And that states what must go into public buildings when they're renovated. And the government actually says, the building codes actually say that in a public building you must have hearing augmentation if there's inbuilt amplification. By the way, if anybody's got the telecoil on their hearing aid now, they can switch it on. I've actually set up a portable loop, and you'll see the white tape on the floor. That's actually the portable loop I've set up in here. One of the frustrations is in this particular room, there's a huge amount of background interference. And that does happen occasionally. I would say less than 2% of the time, actually less than 1% of the time. But of course, this is one of those times. It's a real shame. You have got to be 1/2 metre inside the loop at least, and that's actually the strongest point. And then it weakens a bit towards the centre. So when you're over the top of the loop, you actually lose the signal when it's a perimeter loop. But there are other types. Receivers, systems, and there are generally 2 types of receiver systems. So infrared, here I have an infrared receiver, and this is exactly the same model that if I go to my local cinema and I ask for hearing assistance, they'll first give me a blank look then go off and ask somebody what I'm talking about. And then they'll come back with a box usually, or they'll actually come back with the actual receiver. So this is the and tangled cords too, that's always included. So that's the actual infrared receiver. And that picks up the signal from an emitter on the wall. I'll go on into that in more detail shortly. There's also radio systems. That can be an FM system, it can be a digital FM system, it can be sound field. So we've got a sound field speaker here, and this is the receiver for the sound field. So wear that and I'll pick up the signal directly, wirelessly with it. Bluetooth LE and Auracast. So ReSound have advertised that their new range of hearing aids have Bluetooth LE, which is compatible with Auracast. In 15 to 20 years, Auracast will take over from hearing loops. Now, if you believe the advertising, it'll happen in 3 years. But that advertising has been written by marketing people, not by people who actually understand what's happening. The marketing people want us to replace our hearing aid every 3 years. And you can understand why, it makes them lots of money. But if you've got a mortgage, or if you're a self-funded retiree, you make those hearing aids last. My record was 14 years. And why wouldn't I? I mean, hearing aids are expensive. I mean, they're darn expensive, $10,000 for two. I've got a profound loss, and before the cochlear implants, it was severe to profound. I needed the highest powered ones with all the extra features on it, just to communicate. So you bet I made those hearing aids last every extra day. So with Auracast, these new hearing aids have come out. The first thing we've got to wait for is every hearing aid in the range of every brand to have Bluetooth LE. That's the first step. Then from that date on, I've got to wait 14 years for people to reasonably have replaced their hearing aids to ones that have Bluetooth LE to work with Auracast transmitter. It will happen because Auracast will be in new TVs, for example. I won't need a streamer, it'll be built into the TV. The new phones, mobile smartphones, will have a Bluetooth LE in them as well, so that I'll stream using that instead of the current technology. It'll be a modified form of Bluetooth in essence. So it will come about because it's been made mainstream through phones and technology and using Bluetooth. It really is one of those few times when we win down the track. In the meantime, we've got the danger that people won't put in hearing loops or any other system because of Auracast. Or they'll put in Auracast, and yet then I've got the cochlear brand N8 processors. They've got Auracast, but they need a firmware update. Firmware update hasn't been released yet. So it's coming, but again, not everybody has the latest processors. Not everybody will be getting the latest processors because of the money involved. Because cochlear implants, if you haven't got private health insurance, you go on the public waiting list. And if you've got them through the public waiting list, you don't get them replaced under Medicare. So, you're looking at 10 to 14, 15 years. You make those cochlear processors last every extra day you can, just like hearing aids. The current cost of a replacement processor, one, is around $10,100 roughly. That's the latest figure I've heard. It could be higher. So, Auracast is coming. It's exciting. Ignore all the hype around it. If you're not getting a ReSound hearing aid, wait a year at least and get one that you know has Auracast or Bluetooth LE. So Auracast is the transmitter in the public building. Bluetooth LE is what's in the hearing aid. It's not just normal Bluetooth. It's so new that when I asked one company at their webinar for professionals about 6 weeks ago, they had a webinar to tell us all about their brand new hearing aid range. They said it had Auracast, and I said to them, will it work with other brands that have Auracast? They couldn't answer. In other words, we don't know if it really is compatible with Auracast yet. So I got a phone call this morning while I was setting up saying a prototype Auracast transmitter is available for me to trial. It's not the one that will be eventually sold, the prototype. They're expecting to have them on sale by the end of the year, which I never believe. Early next year, we'll actually start hopefully putting them into public buildings. So I hope that was clearer than mud, but it is a complex topic, it is new information, and it's getting updated on a regular basis, which is why I haven't written anything about it, because it's too volatile with the information flow at the moment. As I said there, don't hold your breath with Auracast. Yeah. The other danger we've got too with Auracast is people stop putting in anything waiting for Auracast, or just putting Auracast transmitter in next year, when, as I said, less than 1% of people will have it, way under 1%. There's also public Wi-Fi systems available. A public Wi-Fi system is where I use my smartphone to pick up the audio and then it connects to my hearing aid. The trouble is it's got a delay in it, and that delay is enough to blur the signal. It's not for lip reading, it's fine, but the delay is that most hearing aids have open molds where the sound can go around the mold or the dome or the cap, depending on the brand and model. The sound can still go in with the hearing aid in place. Because of that, the person will hear the sound from their phone through this public Wi-Fi system 50, 100, 200 milliseconds. One I tried, it was half a second later than what they hear the sound coming straight in from the speaker. The half a second one sent me crazy. No, that's not true. My wife says I already am. The kids back her up. But I just couldn't handle it. It was awful. I had to switch it off. And the trouble is that what we're trying to achieve with hearing augmentation is to get the direct signal clearly. If it's been blurred by the outside sound and the direct signal coming at different times, we've defeated the whole purpose of it. We've actually created that reverberation wirelessly. So that's why and there are two major brands of it on the market. It's disappointing. You know, the building venues, there's a really cheap way to just fit out the place and tick a box, but it's not suitable for people with hearing loss. One client of mine, one of the museums, they've actually switched them all off, and I've actually gone in and put hearing loops in two of their areas. So, yeah. So hearing loops, that's the best type. I've talked about infrared, which I'll come back to. I've talked about FM, the third, or wireless systems. The third is hearing loops. So the hearing loop, I put a perimeter loop. There are different types in here. Taped to the floor, portable. All I do is walk in, sit inside the area more than half a metre from the edge, switch to telecoil, and I pick up the sound directly from this lapel microphone here. So I hear the person as if my ears are where the microphone is. It's nice and clear. The truth is, if it's a good FM system, if it's a good infrared or a good hearing loop, it will all sound excellent. The trouble is, I've seen people mess up all of them at different times, unfortunately. Any questions? Gee, you're a quiet lot today, aren't you? Yes?
Andrew, I have a question. So we see the hearing loop sign at train station platform.
Yes?
So if I'm wearing hearing aids, how do I know the hearing loop is working? Or I stand in the right place to get the sound?
So there's two problems at places like the train platform. So generally in New South Wales, they do have the sign up if they've got it, and the sign is usually something like that. That's the internationally symbol. The problem with the train platforms is that they don't tell you where the hearing loop is. Under the rules, they only need to cover 10% of the platform, of the covered area of the platform. It's disappointing, it's unfortunate, but that's what the law currently says. And the feedback I've got from New South Wales State Rail is that they're only required to do the minimum, so they'll only do the minimum. That wasn't the word they used, but that was the message. So the person relaying it, I said, why won't you do it? It's so easy. I'm just talking about signage. You've got the hearing loop in the platform. You've got to sign up, just improve the signage so we know exactly where it is. Said because the lawyers came back and told us they don't have to. That's our state government, regardless of party, because it's the same regardless of who's in power. Not a political statement, but it is an indictment that an organisation run by our state government has such a ridiculous approach to people with disabilities. But that's the way it is. The second question is, does it actually work? We don't know because we can't find it. And you know how short the announcements are? You don't even have a chance to find it because the announcements don't go on long enough for me to walk up and down the platform to find out where it is. So in short to your answer, we haven't got a clue and we're not getting any help. But I'm talking about train platforms specifically in New South Wales when I say that. And yet we've got the ACT tram platforms, we've got Melbourne tram platforms, we've got Victorian train stations with working hearing loops. And yet in New South Wales, they can't even put a sign up to tell us where it is. They just put up the sign to say it's there. Sorry, another question?
Do I need the mic or I can call out?
By the way, you are talking to people with hearing loss,
Okay.
so
Yep,
loud
okay.
voice doesn't cut it.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking with the hearing loop, like when you go to the theatre and that, you often see a sign, and I'm not sure what that means, but maybe that's 1 or 2 seats you have to sit in. So the bit that you said that you got here, is that what you meant the sound goes into?
Well, the signage they're meant to have at my cinema, what they're meant to have that at the entrance to each cinema
Okay,
where they've got it.
Okay.
They don't, but they're meant to.
So the little thing that you've got here, is that something that you purchased that goes with
Oh no,
your-
this is the microphone to feed into the hearing loop. So you'll see the big box over there with green lights and yellow lights.
Okay.
So that's the hearing loop amplifier, and that's the radio receivers for this radio microphone I'm wearing.
Oh, okay.
So think of me as the venue operator providing the hearing loop.
All right, I'm a bit confused, sorry, because like I'm thinking, I've got like 8-year-old hearing aids, so I'm looking at the future, what will I buy that's more modern? But then I'm wondering, do I have to buy other bits and pieces to perhaps use the hearing loop, or I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, any hearing aid, and every brand has hearing aid with the telecoil available. Not every brand, not every audiologist even tells you about the telecoil. Now, if you haven't got the telecoil, the only option you've got, for example, at my local cinema, is to put the infrared receiver on, whereas I, with a telecoil, will get the neck loop. I'll hang that round my neck. That plugs in. And by the way, a relative of mine, when she was very young, went to the cinema and she'd never seen it before. And she will put it on in the dark like that, and it never worked through the whole cinema movie. She was young, she never said anything. She just had it on the wrong way. Infrared is line of sight. That's all she had to do was turn it over. So, yeah, but I'll use the neck loop and I'll get it wirelessly direct and really clearly. If I haven't got the telecoil, I've got to plug in a pair of headphones. Wear the headphones, I've got to balance them over the microphone of my hearing aids, and then hope when I turn my head they don't fall off. I mean, I look stupid enough as it is without adding headphones way up here, trying to balance them and then falling off all the time. And they sound tinny. If you don't have the telecoil, that's the only other option. We also know the cinemas won't even provide signage. We can't even expect them to put Auracast in. They're going to wait till the very last minute. So in effect, if I was saying to someone, buy a hearing aid now, I'd say wait a year. That's the first thing I'd say, unless yours were dead. The second thing I'd say is make sure you have telecoils, no matter what anybody tells you. Because that is the best way you can be supported with additional devices if you need them. Even if you don't need them now, if your hearing drops, you may need them in the future. Or you may end up moving somewhere like a retirement village where you're in a lot more background noise than you were living at home. Circumstances can change. So for example, I've got a lot of devices on. This is my neck loop, personal neck loop, and this is my Roger on microphone. So we've talked about hearing loops installed on the floor, but this is the personal neck loop to get the sound to my ears for my own microphone. But again, I'm using the telecoil as the last step to get it to my ears clearly. And I can actually get somebody to wear that. So if I came here, I was sitting in the audience and nobody had any kind of hearing augmentation for me, I'd ask them to wear this little clip-on mic. Or I'd ask them to wear the Roger on. The Roger on also has a multitude of other options, but the point in this talk is to say I'm using it with the neck loop to get that clarity. Have I answered the question? Sorry, I said to you, wait a year. 2, get telecoil no matter what. Some audiologists actually believe the marketing of hearing companies. I don't understand it. Because the hearing aid companies say, oh, you don't need anything else, our hearing aids are so good. And some audiologists believe that. If I could, I'd take them to court. because that's not life. The hearing aids are not healing the damage. Having said that, we do have even a board member on Hearing Matters Australia who had 2 hearing aids and doesn't need the extra devices. But if his hearing drops, that's when he will. So if you're replacing them, you want, as I said, why do you get telecoil and get Auracast or Bluetooth LE to work with Auracast? That would be my total recommendation. With the telecoil, there's a whole range of equipment to get the best possible sound. Gee, I know how to talk, don't I? Don't answer that. So, I've got here some pictures. Did I fully answer your question?
I think so. I just need to think about it.
Well, my business cards are here
Okay.
and some general brochures. Feel free to email me.
Thank you.
Okay, that's important because it does take time. I am giving a lot of new information, particularly when it comes to Bluetooth LE and Auracast, when it's so young, but when it's been marketed. So, yeah. So here what we've got is emitters up on the wall with infrared. I mentioned it's line of sight, which means no matter what brand of infrared system it is, the receiver has to be put on the right way. Now I had the marketing person from this particular manufacturer come out and tell me, oh, they had a demonstration set up and everything. And she said, oh, you can wear, it doesn't matter which way you put it on, it'll work perfectly. So I did it there in front of her. But no, it doesn't. I knew it wouldn't. But because I use it, she doesn't. She was a marketing person with no hearing loss. But representing the manufacturer, it has to be the right way round. The frustration with infrared is that if somebody walks in front of me, it blocks that line of sight so it cuts out. I hate that. There was one theaterette I went to where it was so steep, the seating, they had high backs on the chairs so you wouldn't fall over the person in front of you when you walked along. So with wearing this, it was actually below the height of the back in front. It would never work. They put the emitter down at the bottom on the stage. The line of sight has some real issues. The other thing you've got to watch also with the cinemas, because they're one of the most common public building users of these systems, is I ask for a neck loop and they give me this and say, oh no, that's the neck loop. It's a cloth lanyard. It's not a neck loop. So I say to them, could you show me what you've got there, please? I just reach in and pull out the neck loop. Then I test it in front of them to see if the batteries work. Yes, got batteries in it and they're actually on. Whether it'll last the whole movie, which if you think about it, the last Mission Impossible was 2 3/4 hours. I just happen to know. But yeah, and then it's a 4-channel selector of what channel you want. Normally it's always channel 1. But if you're not sure, you've got to try it. There was one cinema chain I had to take to court. Sorry, that's not correct. I launched 5 DDA complaints against them. It didn't cost me a cent. On the 6th one, I got pro bono legal advice. That caused the venue to actually read my original complaints, which they hadn't done. And all they had to do to solve the problem was move the line of sight emitters. They had them at the back of the room instead of the front because it would cost more to run the cabling from the back to the front. So the only way I could use it was to hang it over the back of me like that, which I didn't find very good, I might add, particularly if you went to gold class. So in the end, they even paid, the other side even paid for special legal advice and everything if they just read my complaint. all I wanted to do was hear. And it was such a simple fix. In the end, I got a gag order because I won, so I'm not allowed to tell you who it was. But they now have, in all, however many cinemas they've got in that particular complex, they all now work. Staff training is a different issue, but yeah, at least the equipment works. And I can go to Mission Impossible, I can go to Star Trek and go get James Bond. So that's all that matters. But yeah. But infrared I'm frustrated with because of that line of sight. I can't hide the emitter under my clothing. It's got to be visible. It's got to be the right way round. I prefer the radio systems where the transmitter can be just in the cupboard somewhere. Sends a wireless signal, and you can, that's the receiver there, and that's actually the neck loop is part of the lanyard. I've actually found it uncomfortable. I met with the Australian distributor for that brand a few months ago. I said to him, I want you to wear that for a day. Because sometimes you go to all-day conferences, work conferences. He admitted when I caught up with him last, no, he didn't actually wear it. But he said, the manufacturers come out with a better neck loop. So he showed it to me and I wore it during the meeting. Much more comfortable. But, you know, you may think, why am I talking about whether it's comfortable or not? Well, you know what, if you've actually got to wear the thing and it feels like a lead weight round your neck, that does affect performance. I'm not going to be bothered wearing it. I'm not going to be bothered coming and using it. So when I supply them, I always supply them with a lanyard and a separate neck loop. For that reason. Hearing loop amp, with all of them, you've got the venue PA system connected to the amp. In this case, the hearing loop amp is over there with all the pretty lights. The bottom one, the one with the hearing loop amp. And hearing loops can be installed anywhere. Now, the background interference in this particular room, it is bad. That doesn't just affect the hearing loop, it also affects me using a neck loop. So I will have the same problem using the hearing loop in this particular room as I will using the neck loop for the sound field or the neck loop with my personal mic. Yes, Brendan?
Yeah, what affects it in this particular room? Because I turned the T-core on and the background interference is really loud, so it's very hard to hear you at the moment. So is that the lights in the room?
Well, you're also too close over the top of the cable.
I moved across
Yeah.
there.
Right.
I've been moving around the room. So what's affecting it in this particular room?
So the interference is actually caused by power cabling in the building. It's very rare, but this is one of those cases where when it was built, they didn't actually follow the rules for the cabling, and it's actually generated noise. It's actually a loop of noise with the electrical cabling. I once had a very large church I'd put in a hearing loop in over St Ives Way, and I installed it and I forgot to check before I started whether there was any background interference, and I normally do that with every quote. We're going back 30 years now. And I switch it all on, loop's working beautifully, switch over, there's all this background noise. You can imagine the egg on my face if I couldn't solve this problem. It took me a little while to work it out, but all we had to do was disable one two-way switch and solve the problem completely. Because the two-way switches for the lights were generating a loop of interference. So we disconnected one and rewired it, silent as anything. So we solved that background interference. But yeah, it took an effort. But yeah, you could solve it here. It would take recabling of all the lighting, basically. It could be the power or all the lights. I'd have to check that out. But it's frustrating, I can tell you that. There are numerous different names for hearing loops, by the way. Powered audio induction loop system, audio frequency induction loop system, that's one of the common ones. Hearing aid loop systems, hearing induction loop systems, hearing impaired induction loop systems I've also seen. Deaf aid loop, which I absolutely hate. So with FM or infrared, I've got to wear a neck loop, work with the telecoil, hearing loops installed, works with the telecoil, but I don't need to get a receiver. I don't need to find out at the cinema where to get the receiver from, if it's a hearing loop system. And then of course, there's the coverage, which seats are covered. So that's another issue as well. In theory, inside the cinema, so this is the sign I normally provide where I cover the whole, put a hearing loop in and cover the whole area, the whole room or area. And I'll put that sign up, part of the job. Or there may be multiples if it's a large area. There's one school the size of a basketball court, or literally a basketball court in the hall. The sign I made for that was that big, so made out of aluminium. And what's meant to happen where it's a receiver system, this sign's meant to be inside the room, but say it's a receiver system and say where to get the receivers from. I have never seen a single cinema do it. It's disappointing. Yesterday I was at one venue where they're actually looking at fixing that problem. They've got the Roger system with the neck loops, but they didn't know how to use it. And I went through all the training with them, and they're actually going to put in the signage so that people actually know where to get the receivers from. They had a sign that get it from reception, and I couldn't even see reception. And the sign, so that they purchased the sign as a stock standard sign from a particular company, but the signs up where the things were being held said business manager, not reception. Well, and it was round the corner out of sight. So the signage has to be relevant as well, and that's what I work towards. It's always a case of what the real person needs on that sign for this system to work and be used. And yeah, it's interesting. There was another case late last year where the sign said concierge, and I asked them, and it actually said concierge on level 1. I said to them, down at your concierge on level 1, is it called reception or concierge? They looked at me and they said, oh, it is called concierge. And we went down there, and yes, there was a big sign that said concierge. So their signage did match what was real life, and I complimented them on that. So, you know, people downplay the importance of signage. Yet this venue yesterday, they had working systems. Nobody knew where to get the receivers from, including the staff, because the staff didn't even know what it was. So, yes. A few hobby horses I've got going out there. Interesting research in the USA. The USA back in the 90s decided to give up on hearing loops. They decided they wanted to put FM in everywhere. In 2001, consequently, only 31% of fittings of hearing devices had telecoil. They finally woke up, and in 2014, 81% of models of hearing aids have the telecoil. So they've seen the light. They've also got a very, very strong consumer organisation, HLAA, Hearing Loss Association of America, that's really made a difference. So they also did a survey, 866 people, 80% of them and they listened to a performance without a hearing loop, and they had to rate how well they heard it out of 10. Only 13.5% rated it 8, 9 or 10 out of 10 how well they heard. With the hearing loop system, 86% said 8, 9 or 10 out of 10. So it makes a difference. And, you know, this is particularly relevant for audiologists who are inundated by marketing material by all the hearing aid companies telling them how good their hearing aids are. And I've even seen ads on TV in the last 6 months regularly telling me that, you know, if you buy that particular brand of hearing aid, you'll actually hear better than hearing people. I try not to swear, I don't like doing it, but there are times when I'm really tempted, when I see things like that, that are so wrong in real life. Or it may be true for, you know, 1 in 1,000 people, not the average. So why am I pushing the hearing loop over all the other options? It works with any brand of hearing aid or implant has a telecoil. I don't have to identify myself as having a disability. That's a big one. Having any disability is an emotional journey. I'm no longer normal. Well, my wife said I was never normal, but we're not going to go there. But maybe that's because I've been hearing impaired since birth with progressive loss. But anyway, coming to grips with an invisible disability doesn't always happen. If it's invisible, you may never come to grips with it. I mean, there have been cases where I've been listening to an associate yelling down the phone because the person at the other end was trying to say she wasn't deaf and didn't need hearing aids. And yeah, with invisible disabilities, you have the option of living in denial and pulling back out of society. At least with a telecoil, if you've got a hearing aid, you don't have to wear a receiver. And I know for a fact, particularly young people, won't wear a receiver in many situations because they're still on that emotional journey where they haven't fully accepted their disability. But let's face it, disability means I'm not as good as somebody else. I'm not as normal as somebody else. It very rarely means I'm better than somebody else. In reality, we're all equal, but that's not the message we're given by society. Obviously with the hearing loop, I don't have to find out where to get receivers. Have you ever thought about it? I have a communication disability, but then I've got to communicate to find out where to get the receivers from to help me communicate. It'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. And let's face it, Saturday night at the cinemas is not exactly a quiet place to try and communicate. It's got quieter because you do so much online ticketing, but you have to get the receivers from the candy bar where everybody's lined up and you're holding up the line just to get the receivers as well. And yes, anyway. I don't have to communicate with staff. Receiver and attachment don't fail. The neck loops at my local cinema badly need replacing. They've started to go faulty. Batteries aren't required with the telecoil. You know, the batteries are inside the processor or the hearing aid. It's also an advantage for venue operators. From their point of view, all their costs of actually handing out, collecting receivers. Some people have said to me, a hearing loop's old technology. You bet it is. Since the 1940s they've been around. But FM radio's been around since the 1930s. Same applies to hearing aids, FM and infrared. They've been around for decades. The Model T Ford. Now, first mass-produced car, that's actually a picture of the 1910 version. But did you know my car is so similar to that? My car has 4 wheels, steering wheel, windscreen, seats. It's actually got headlights as well. My car's got all those things, but my car is much more modern, I'm really pleased to say. Much more modern. I mean, that car's got air conditioning. I prefer my car's air conditioning. But it's the same with all this other technology, whether it's hearing loops, infrared or FM. Today's technology is much more modern and much better. But it's all based on original principles. So, yeah. Now here I've got a picture of the loop receiver. So that's for people who don't have hearing aids or don't have the telecoil on the hearing aid. They've got to wear the headphones or take their hearing aids out and wear earbuds. And this one will pick up the signal from a hearing loop. Or they can also use, if it's an infrared, they can use earbuds and take their hearing aids out. It's never ideal to take your hearing aids out because they're custom tuned to your hearing loss. But if you haven't got the telecoil, you haven't got any other option. You either wear the headphones over the top or you take the hearing aids out, put headphones or earbuds in. But this system is actually a loop receiver, allows you to pick up the hearing loop. I've talked about signage. That's one that fails. You're not allowed to have the T in it, and that's the American version, not the Australian. So that's the valid version in Australia under the rules, and that's the failed version. So as I said, that's the sign we would typically install, and if it's an FM system, we custom make them to say where to get the receivers from that's actually relevant to that location. At the entrance, we put the hearing loop one. If it's a receiver system, we put the receivers up. So the building code's very clear on where they have to go. The building codes are actually very ambiguous, but when you drill down and actually nut it out, it's very specific. Yeah. Any questions at all? There are also different arrays and designs for hearing loops we can put in as well. Counters. If you ever see the ear symbol of the counter, in theory, they have a hearing loop system at the counter. Whether it works or not, you've got to try it to find out. So, my details are there. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me. You've got the website. There's also information on the website on these different systems as well.
Thanks, Andrew.